Matt. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee to order. Do I hear a motion for adoption of the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Bodie. It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Point of order.
Yes.
Since this is a Budget and Finance Committee meeting, those of us not on the Budget and Finance Committee don't vote, right?
Actually, you do, because our tradition is that once the budget season starts, which we've effectively started in June, that all members of the council become a member of the Budget Committee at that point. Yes. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Furtani.
In which case, yes. I will vote aye.
Yes. So we have an aye there. Mr. Goldman.
Sorry?
We were voting on the agenda. We're just checking to see if it was an affirmative.
Aye.
Okay. Are there any nays? Okay, hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you. We do have a quorum this evening. We have 2 members virtually and 3 of us here on the dais. And we'll get started here tonight. And this is a real fun part of the process here. And I hope you all have a chance to take a look at the basic spreadsheet that I sent out today about goals for the upcoming meetings here. And again, former council member graciously put that together for us a couple of years ago, and I riffed off of his work. And I hope that that helps you to understand what what our objectives are for each of the evenings. We're going to start out tonight with Chief Harden and the police department. Welcome, Chief. And before we actually get started, Mr. Harden, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to the firefighters and first responders out the Bolt Creek fire that's pretty close to us locally. They're out there battling. Hopefully the weather stays exactly the way it is right now, because it seems to be the time when they can contain. At least that's what they reported earlier today. So everybody that's out there fighting and doing that, just a quick shout out. So wanted to say that.
Thank you, Chief.
Does the council members on Zoom hear me pretty good? Thumbs up or yes? Oh, excellent. No? Okay, good. So good evening, council, community, and mayor. Today is my 3rd anniversary as your police chief, and I will do my best to present quickly and efficiently the present makeup of the PD, the budget, and current challenges we face within the PD. So very respectfully, I would like to ask the council for 2 things. First, I'd like you to turn to the mayor's proposed budget, page 73 and 74. And if you don't have pages on yours, it's the last page of the police department section, which is the police budget summary. And then second is, while I'm going through the presentation, if you could write down any questions you may have, as I will likely answer those questions in this presentation. At the end, I'll answer any questions you may have. All right. Matt, it's not working. Can you touch the, there you go. Oh, there it goes. All right, thank you, City Administrator. Okay, so this is the organizational chart of the police department. We have about 40% of the city staff, and most often the visible contact with the public. Our staff is a huge resource for the community, and we are often the problem solvers for much more than just criminal behavior. As you can see, there's 23 FTEs for the PD and 1 FTE that is our emergency manager, Kevin Lowry. With the emergency manager, we share 1/4 of his salary with the NEMCO agencies and get grant funds from the federal government. The PD is divided in half with support and patrol. And in patrol, there are 4 squads to cover the road. As you can see, there's a supervisor for each squad. 1 squad is down an officer position, and what we do is try to cover the night shift with 3 officers and a sergeant. The day shift is down 1, and the traffic officer ends up helping with coverage. We use admin and detectives during the day for emergency backup. However, night shift does not have that ability. So more often than not, there's generally 2 or 3 officer sergeants working at a time because of training, vacation, holiday, sick, etc. So our minimum is 2 hours working at any time. So keep in mind, a large portion of an officer's day is writing reports. A little fast or slow? All right. Let's slow. So since January 1st of this year, 66% of the time we run with a minimum coverage of 2 patrol officers assigned on the road. Only 33% of the time do we have 3 patrol officers working a shift, and only 1%, which happens to be 6 occurrences this year, when there was a full squad of 4. When I say we have current and future staffing challenges, it's always been thought of in the past because we've had open positions and we were having a difficult time finding officers to fill those positions. Since October of 2019, for all intents and purposes, we've been virtually fully staffed. We've just had so many non-deployable officers in that time frame. 21-22 was a tough budget year with retirements and new hires. So we had large payouts with large banks of time. This cut a large piece of the salary and benefits budget, but we keep a careful eye and remain under or on budget at this time. We also remember this cuts deeply into our uniform, vests, badges, equipment budgets every time we have to hire a police officer. Police negotiations began in early 21, but did not get finalized till the middle of 22. There was back pay, a second increase effective July 1st, 2022. The contract is good until the end of 2024. So this covers this next biennium. For 21-22, we had 6 employees leave the department and 5 hired fairly quickly thereafter, not including the chaplain position. This is very important to understand that quick hires and smooth transitions cost the city much less in the long run. The process of leaving and hiring costs the city a large portion of the salary, equipment, training, and time. It's extremely important to keep people because if we become an agency where people come and go, this will drive up costs exponentially. We've been fortunate to actually have fairly low turnover and good morale. Now what we're faced with is the challenge of keeping our current staff. Right now we are in an excellent position with staff. First, we're down 1 position to the approved FTEs, which just happened in this last few weeks. And we are working hard to fill that position. We have everyone off of initial probation. We have a staff that for the most part has weathered the morale issues within the current and past climate and love working for LFP. Other advantages we currently have has been invested in all the initial equipment, bonuses paid off, a lot of initial training is completed. And also keep in mind that we had an open position for emergency manager, and we had Lieutenant Lehman serving as the interim emergency manager. This caused breakdowns in patrol because trying to manage a job as an operations lieutenant and then trying to carry the job of emergency manager is just too much. Thankfully, we have Kevin, which you will meet soon. Our staff, including all of City Hall staff, are stretched very thin. Large cities have resources and bigger staff. When we lose a person for any reason, that falls on someone else to take on. And this is very stressful to all of our departments. Overtime has been moderate to high because we've had fairly good coverage, but certain times of the year, we face some tough coverage issues that had to cut deep into our overtime budget. So in a perfect world, we maintain what we have now, and in the long run, the costs are much lower, especially for the next couple of years. If we lose officer positions from retirement, layoffs, termination, or any other reason, we have to start all over again, and all those costs associated with recruitment, hiring, equipment, training, staffing coverage with OT, and so forth. It can cost the city well over $250,000 for a new officer. It's critical to keep the staff that we have. That is done through financially making it a very tough decision for an officer to leave or quit. That's through competitiveness with other police departments and pay and benefits, a great working environment, which includes training, equipment, and resources, and support from the community and from this council. We have all seen the issues from other cities when those things don't align. And this type of culture also keeps liability low for the city. We have already begun to see high insurance rates, increases partly because of the police laws that were passed and because of lawsuits. Another challenge is maintaining a healthy work environment for an incredibly stressful and trauma-filled job. We can and will work on this every year. However, we will need funding to provide that help and resources. I can go into more of the morale issues that we see in the news, but I think we're all acutely aware of what's going on with law enforcement. Just ask any person, what person would want to take a job as a police officer, much less in Seattle right now. We've all seen how essential we are in coming into work and being praised in the community, and then the vitriol of the riots and the attack on officers and the mantra of defunding police budgets. Those defunding cities now are putting millions of dollars back into public safety. So it goes to the heart of our officers. It's tough when you get this job and you want to serve the community. So we're working on health and wellness options, like potentially building a gym for officers to work out stress and stay healthy. much needed upgrades to the locker rooms, which have aged over 20 years, using a mental health professional that officers can talk to, and then just recently, in the last couple of weeks, a statewide health app for officer resources going far beyond regular EAP and other ideas. I promise I'll get this order right. So as we get into the budget, current future challenges, I want to start right off the bat with our public safety budget. And in this slide, I'm using the 2021 actual numbers and the 2022 actual plus what's projected the rest of the year. You'll see two versions on the right. The top includes the traffic safety camera program, which includes the budget of 17%, which is in gray, which is attached to our public safety budget. The bottom version takes that camera program out. The point I want to drive home to council and the community is to understand that the police department is running on a very lean, tight budget. Taking out salary, benefits, insurance, dispatch, and law enforcement items like animal control, emergency management, tree account services, detention fees, we are left with the daily operations for the police department that uses about 7 to 9% of the public safety budget, or roughly $300,000 to $350,000 a year. It does show in the graph a 9% and $700,000 for 2 years, but this includes some large one-time expenses of equipment and training through grants. So looking at past budgets, we are closer to the 7% of the public safety budget, or roughly $300,000 a year, that accounts for all the supplies, uniforms, equipment, training, travel, software, hardware, communications, police technology, other contracted services, community policing, crime watch, copier, SWAT, fuel, vehicle repair, due subscriptions, so many other items. I can go on and on of all that, all to operate the police department of 23 staff running 24/7 for the year. So as I walk through this budget presentation, please be mindful of our standard operations running at roughly $300,000 a year. So let's talk a little bit about equipment. Some of these costs are ongoing, but let's talk about the one-time purchases and the good news that we have set ourselves up for success from the last couple of years and going forward. Last budget cycle, I reported laptops needed to be replaced, as well as severely aged radios, tasers, radar units. Patrol vehicles needed replacement, and we pushed those off, extending them to future budgets. Software upgrades and additions can help with efficiencies, and we look towards the future with paperless systems. One of those examples is our scheduling system, which we transitioned to in 2021. And then fully in 2022. It took a while to get going, but it's now proven itself out with the connection to our city Springbrook software that was updated about the same time, about a year before, and used for state auditing purposes. Another piece of software that the PD had looked at in the past, but now will be a requirement for accreditation, is Power DMS. This software helps with paperless systems, but it's now integrated in a WASPIC's accreditation process. So we now have to use this software, which is good news, but the really good news is the major cost reduction because of its mandate beginning in 2023. Police portable radios have been a huge issue. And with such tight budgets and the pullbacks on available funds, we are in need of radio replacements. We continue, even to this day, piece together broken radios, and PSERN radio replacements is another large challenge. They continue to have delays, mostly from supply chain issues. I actually do see the light at the end of this tunnel, hopefully in the next couple months. We're also going to need planning for radio maintenance and any additional service fees when PSERN transitions to full time. With this also comes radio coverage in our own City Hall building. We had a bidirectional amplifier, BDA, that aged out. It caused radio static problems to all the agencies in the surrounding area. They had to come out and disconnect it. This means that first responders in our building cannot hear or broadcast out of certain areas in the building. And that is for fire, police, even public works if they're on our radio system. So a request for the new BDA was included in the mayor's budget. In the coming years, the City Hall building needs help. I mentioned the officers' lockers that need to be replaced, but also carpeting is held down by long strips of duct tape. Rooms need painting. The HVAC venting needs upgrades in the holding cell area and the small area where officers cook their meal breaks. One piece of the PD budget is the request for AEDs, automated external defibrillators. These replacements. These are units in the City Hall, public work buildings, and the patrol cars. An AED is used when those experiencing sudden cardiac arrest. 80 units we currently deploy are nearing or at the end of their life. Several units are undeployable and will not operate. In the mayor's budget, the request is to have these units replaced. So for example, you will see that in the line item, there's I think 550% increase in the small tools and equipment line item. That's what that item is for. Training is a large portion of an officer's job requirements, and it can be administratively stressful as we have to check off so many training requirements, including mandatory, specialty, unfunded mandates from the legislature, and community expectations. And also every time we hire a new officer, their initial 1 to 3 years is front loaded with a whole lot of training. And this has and will continue to be a challenge in our PD as it is nationwide. And with these trainings come travel. Travel expenses have risen and the availability of local training has been very difficult. Something that I'm very excited to be supporting and ask for your support is the regional training facilities. Governor Inslee and other legislators announced a plan to add several training facilities in the state. This will drive costs down, provide more localized training and more opportunities for our local instructors to provide that training. I can go more into this later for questions, but it is exciting news and I'm very much behind this plan. Equipment and resources have been a major challenge and will continue into the foreseeable future with budgeting, but we really want to have really good news to report. One extremely bright light has been grants and donations. We have used grants and donations from the Police Foundation to purchase several pieces of equipment and training, and that in no way could we have done through a city budget in this short period of time. In 21-22, we received over 140,000 in grant funds for an interview system upgrade, use of force software, body-worn cameras, duty and intervene training, investigations equipment and training, ballistic shields, tasers and supplies, bowler wrap devices and supplies, health and wellness resiliency training, traffic radars and LiDARs. And we also received donation funds from the North Sound Police Foundation that covered the radars and LiDARs that the grant could not cover completely. Portable breath test devices, eye and ear protection upgrade for the officers at the range. And we continue to explore more things to improve our officer resources and what they need. So we've been working with the Public Works Director and Finance on a replacement plan for patrol vehicles. And because of past budgeting decisions, we're facing more difficulties. We've already extended out the preventative maintenance to lower expenditures. And with police reform laws, we've seen more disregard to police vehicles, thus creating more damage and more repair costs. Our repair costs have been very high, and with the current economic situation, those costs continue to rise, including fuel costs. We created an 8 to 10 year plan for vehicle replacement, and we as a city really need to stick to it so we don't continue to be in the current situation we are in. We need to build reserves while we make the much needed purchases of vehicles and equipment replacement. One goal I'd like to see in the next few years is transitioning to electric police vehicles, whether that is current SUVs from Ford or Chevy, or we move to Tesla or some other electric-centric companies. Hybrid vehicles will be a natural transition, but it costs more in the short term and then much less in the long term. Mukilteo PD recently purchased a Tesla as their traffic patrol vehicle, so it'll be good to watch the pros and cons of this. Another thing to consider is the timeline for obtaining vehicles. Besides the higher costs, we're not receiving vehicles on a timely basis. Major delays, inventory and supply chain issues are to blame, but that means we need to order much earlier, expecting those long delays. So the council has had many discussions on traffic calming. Enforcement will have its challenges with a lean staff. I requested a full-time employee for another traffic officer position. This position would create the symmetry to all the crews and a multiplier for traffic enforcement by having 2 traffic officers. And let's remember that ATS video review for the camera system takes officer time and resources away from the road and coverage. The system is a huge force multiplier in getting the public to slow down and obey the rules of the road and decreasing collision rates. Adding a cameras will add to review time for the current staff. These are things the council must consider when adopting the mayor's budget. We have a successful program with our traffic calming efforts because funds have been allocated for signs, traffic engineering reports with data, markings, and other ideas that require these funds. We have to manage the challenge and expectations of the community in regard to traffic calming measures. We will continue to maintain the high level of community engagement and the expectations of our community. Social media is very helpful in getting the word out and maintaining open communication. Block Watch needs more of a robust program, And within those meetings will be expectations from a police staff that does its best in fulfilling what they request, which is generally traffic complaints and when we have outbreaks of property crimes and the responsiveness to their calls for service. A challenge we have is with new families that arrive in our city, especially when they come from jurisdictions that did not have the responsiveness from their police agency that we provide, letting them know about our police department and the high levels of service we provide. How our community events are approached can be a challenge when we have reduced staff. Our tight budgets limiting overtime. For example, National Night Out in 2020 was canceled in August, moved to October. Many agencies canceled altogether in 21, and somehow we made it work with the coverage of officers we had. 22 continued that trend and is an enormous event to build community. So in the future, we need to look at electric bikes to patrol the Burke-Gilman Trail and the town center. We need to look at Marine Patrol unit and what that may look like with a new lakefront property is built for the community. We need to look at equipment for officers when responding to active shooter situations and continue to work with other agencies in a regional effort to drive down costs and increase resources. We are looking at non-lethal de-escalation tools like Pepperball, Cellbrite for cell phone investigations, which reduces investigative time, UAVs for traffic collision, search and rescue, and vehicle pursuit alternatives. We're also looking at a red dot system for firearms that increase accuracy and transitioning from 40 caliber to 9mm handguns for accuracy and reduced ammo costs. Our current issued Glock 40 platform handguns have aged out and are in need of replacement, and a transition to 9mm will reduce costs and a better platform. More on this on a future meeting. And lastly, North Sound radar program needs this city's support. It has the support of our law enforcement officers, and we can see the benefits of this valuable program. Grants can only go so far, and having our city part of a regional effort will build the program into a successful outcome for our community members that need help and can be taxing on our neighborhoods and businesses. It will be beneficial when law enforcement can transition out of providing the help to mental health, addiction, and other mental health crises as much as possible. Until then, our officers will help in this process to keep everyone safe. So just remember, the less staff, the more resource intensive, the less outreach and responsiveness of our police staff. Our community loves the police department, and it's a reflection of our city administration, council, and the mayor making public safety a high priority. In closing, we all enjoy a police force that is customer service driven, is providing the resources to keep officers healthy, morale high, and maintain longevity. This in turn provides a city with a high quality, high standard of policing, which keeps our community safe. So I'll take any questions you have from that presentation. And I've got all the line items here from those pages. If there's something that you want to point out or question, I can give you the data and what that entails.
Thank you, Chief. Colleagues, thoughts, questions for the chief? Mr. Lipo?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Harden, for the presentation. It was very thorough. A couple of questions on the line items. You talked about overtime, and this is just from my understanding. In looking at it, it shows a significant increase to the overtime. And could you talk a little about why you see that coming in comparison to the last biennium?
Some of it is the way that we do overtime as a city. So for example, our officers work an off-duty gig at UW football games. Those are all reimbursed. But the way that this fund works, and Director Bond, please back me up if I'm wrong or change it. Those funds that get reimbursed go back into the general fund. So they don't go back into that fund to show that it goes down. So my cost increase for overtime, but the money that's coming in is reimbursed has the story to say, there's where it's taken care of. Right? Yeah. So taking that, we've increased overtime for the town center. So we reached out to the town center because we've had so much theft that's been going on there. Their security just is not as robust as the police department and can handle things as well. And we wanted to lower the amount of property that was being stolen out of there. So we reached out to them. So they have been reimbursing us for our overtime costs. The UW has extended beyond football. We have basketball and some other sports. Shoreline Arts with the Battle of the Bands and some of these other events, they reach out to us for officer coverage. Some of the traffic control, we have a 5K, I think on the 25th, that's going down Burke-Gilman Trail. So when we start adding up all of these other overtime costs, that ends up going up higher, although majority of that stuff gets reimbursed.
So when I look at the line item here, and again, maybe it all pencils out and I'm just not tracking. So under the 21-22 projected, it was about 147.
21-22 projected 147, yes?
Right, and then for the coming biennium, it's 366. Is that because the 147 reflects the reimbursement?
It does, I think. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Because what I'm trying to understand is there really an increase in the overtime effort? Or is it a reflection of the fact that you're doing more overtime, but it is being reimbursed?
We are doing more overtime and it's getting reimbursed. That's why there's a higher level that's gone up.
I'm just trying to understand why the significant jump. You can get back to me, that's fine.
And also, I'm sorry, excuse me, just reminded me of something. We also included, well, no, that was in the court's budget, right? Disregard what I was going to say, because we also had a court detail that was getting done, but that is not in this budget. So
Okay.
not
So
included in that line.
If I could maybe understand a little more about why the overtime is going up. And then one other on the communications, it's jumping from like 106 to 154.
That's anticipation of PSERN, because we're going to get new radios, but they're going to end up having to have checks, repair checks, or not thinking the word right, warranty checks. I can't remember what the
Okay.
word is, but anyway, those
so it's part of that.
yes.
cost for
And
the new
then we
radios.
pay EPSCA right now for the services. Those fees likely will go up when PSERN transitions completely over, which will happen hopefully next year. And that'll be 23 and 24. This is more of an anticipated cost, but I'm hoping that it's not going to be anywhere near what that is.
Okay.
But
Thank
that's
you.
the only thing that's done in that budget is radios.
That will widen our applicant pool because they won't need to know how to solder, right, Chief?
Yes.
Okay. I think Councilmember Bodie, did you have your hand up?
No, I did not. I appreciate the presentation and I appreciate the stresses and challenges that our police department faces with the current staffing. So I understand that. I wish we were a more affluent city, but I really appreciate the commitment to community that our officers have. So thanks, Chief Harden.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilmember. Colleagues, any other questions for the chief? Let's go around the horn here real quick and make sure. Councilmember Goldman, did you have any questions or no questions? Councilmember Farrakani. No. Please, back to you, John.
Yeah, I don't know what page it is on, but I'm looking at like the 23-24 equipment. It's 2 pages back where it talks about police vehicle replacement plan, 23-24, 2 patrol, 1 detective, 1 admin, vest replacement, firearm upgrades, capital improvements. Are those all in the budget or are they desires? Because
Those are planned out in the budget. I think, is that the 501 fund? Is that right?
Vehicles are in a separate fund.
they're in a separate fund, but all these other improvements. But for example, I'm trying to understand which is in the budget or which are desires, because it does include, for example, e-bikes on the Bergman Trail. And you talked about a desire for that, but as I look at the budget, I'm trying to understand what is actually in this request as opposed to what's in as a desire.
Those are all desire on the page that you're reading. That is the police department's page that's taken from our operational plan of things that we would like to see in the future, but those are not budgeted items in the mayor's proposed budget.
Okay. But you did mention, for example, patrol cars, and that's described elsewhere.
Patrol
vehicle
cars are definitely
replacement.
needed,
Okay.
but they're in the
Okay.
501 that I think Public Works may go over. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, so all of these are just desires.
These are desires, things that we would like to see that we've seen over the years, but these are just future things, challenges that
Things like-
all council should be aware of.
Yeah, but like the staff locker room upgrades, that's in the budget,
Yes, that is in
even
the
though it
budget.
shows up here as a desire.
Yes, So
And again, I'm trying to sort out what's in the budget request as opposed to what's a desire.
So all of those were desires.
Yeah.
The ones that made it into the mayor's budget was the
Yeah.
locker rooms, the BDA, the bidirectional amplifier, and the AEDs. The other request that we had in there was the traffic officer that did not go forward.
Chief, just quickly on point, if I recall correctly, it goes back almost 8 or 10 years, the defibrillators, I think they were donated by the Rotary Club. I'm trying to remember. It goes, I was part of the foundation at that time, and I think that I helped with that.
I
at some
think that
point.
was the very first cycle.
Oh, first cycle,
Yeah,
okay.
and then we ended up replacing
replace it.
those.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what that was.
I'm just
And
kind of
we didn't have as many either. I think there was only a handful. We have it in every patrol car. We
excellent.
have 3 or 4 in this building and then a Public Works.
Outstanding. Thank you. Let's see, moving on here, Councilmember Goldman.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I have a question about the traffic officer that you had requested. I recall, I think the amount would have been about $270. Would there be some level of cost savings of having an additional traffic officer? For instance, if that meant reduced overtime among the other officers?
It does, because when we have 2 officer minimums, if I have another officer working, then those officers can work and I can get them to the other officers to training. So there's coverage that is taken care of. It doesn't quite reach the 270,000 mark to fill the entire time. But what it does is it really helps out the amount of workload and productivity that the police department has to deal with traffic camera tickets, when they're handling calls and things have to be held, when you have training that's going on and just a coverage issue. So it doesn't, the overtime, if you were to do the math, does not completely do it, but it is a large portion of it.
Okay, and this could be offline, but if you could maybe estimate or try to quantify what that savings would be, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Bodie.
Yes, thank you very much. I do have a couple of questions, as it turns out. So Chief Harden, in the course of discussing the building department, we talked a bit about the importance of recovering our costs and fees and making sure that we stay up to date with the fees. And I understand that you mentioned that certain activities that the police department does, including some that result in overtime, get reimbursed by others. And so I was wondering if you could describe to us how you decide, or how that is approached, because I guess that's something I've never completely understood. Sometimes we get reimbursed and sometimes we don't. So how does the police department handle that?
It's generally a third-party entity, so it's like the UW. We do have a CSPA as our Small Cities Coalition. So anytime an agency in our coalition says we need officers for whatever, Boeing Golf Classic in Snoqualmie, all of the agencies in CSPA are given that opportunity. So we do CSPA, the UW, and then anybody that's going to do work in our city, like a 5K, Shoreline Arts, those kind of things. We don't generally, and I don't allow the security anywhere else. The UW is just about the only one that I do outside, because we have a specific contract and there's hundreds of officers that help out with that particular event and they need the help. But if somebody's asking for just private stuff, we have an overtime rate that the city pays for the cost of the officer's overtime rate, plus the equipment and the things that it takes to have an officer there. But majority of them are just special events.
What about Merck? You were talking about the mall, and so I do think it's true. I see what you are saying, that the mall doesn't have very good security of its own. So because our police department's right there, we're called on, and I think you mentioned that they were reimbursing some of our costs. So how does that work?
So when we have a normal day, there's no overtime that's being requested by the town center. This is just the service we provide to our town center, the police services. But what we needed to do is put more of a presence there. And we told them, how much coverage would you like that is responsible for just this detail? They told us what they needed. And then we provided those officers if the staffing was allowed, if we have the officers. So we could have an entire week that they wanted somebody there from, say, 8 to 12, and officers could sign up. But there may be days where there's not enough coverage at the police department. Nobody wanted to sign up. So it's up to the availability of the officers, but they would set a schedule. And then those particular days where the officers only assigned to work there, those are the reimbursements.
So do they have security on site?
They do.
Okay, I guess I've missed seeing that, but I guess that's good. My second question is about the lakefront park. So one of the thoughts I've had in passing, and of course, we don't know if that will be open to the public during this biennial budget. We don't really know whether sometime in 2024 the lakefront park would be open. Certainly doesn't seem likely in 2023. But I was wondering if you had ever given thought to there being like a security office there in one of the buildings that's there that might be rehabbed. It occurred to me that at certain times or certain events, it might be convenient to have a small security office there where an officer could do their paperwork, but keep an eye on what was going on or something like that. So any thoughts on that? Have you given any thought to that at all? Or is this just my wild idea?
It's not a bad idea. We do have a caretaker there, so there's somewhat of security. That's a future discussion on how that goes. And as we start transitioning from that caretaker leaving to, we're working on the property. It's a good idea and we can look into it. I have not thought of that idea. I thought more of the place being used as storage, quite honestly, because our city hall is so stuffed.
True. Or a gym.
Yeah, we're trying to find space, doing what we can.
Okay, thanks. I hope we engage that conversation sometime during the biennium and have more thought of this, but I appreciate the fact that it's still a little vague and unsettled.
Sounds good.
I think we lost Councilmember Bodie there. Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, other questions? Chief, it actually isn't unprecedented to have officers in the Lion Creek property until they could tear down the house. There were security issues. So one of the previous chiefs lived there for a period of time.
Yes.
So
Chief Peterson did.
Yeah, he did indeed. Well, thank you very much, Chief. And I just want to reiterate something that I said at the last meeting. I have observed your officers, I think now at least 4 occasions, dealing with some very difficult situations out there in the community with people that need support. And they have handled themselves with kindness, dignity, compassion, and it really is a testament to the leadership of you and your department. And so we look forward to these continuing discussions, but know that we really do appreciate all that you guys do for us every day.
We appreciate the support, and those comments really hit us well, and we need to hear that because it's a tough job, and these officers do need to hear that job's being done. So we appreciate that, and I know that the sentiment is with all council members, and very much appreciated. We have a very healthy city and council, and I'm super appreciative of that.
Thank you, Chief. I sure appreciate your time. All right. Any other questions? Anyone? I think we're good. Okay. Thanks again. Okay. And we are moving on here to the Municipal Court. Welcome.
Good afternoon or good evening. Usually here during the day. Right. Here we are. I'm Judge Jennifer Grant. I am very pleased to be here to present to council, the court administrator, finance department head, and the mayor. Slow or fast?
Slow. Down. Go down. It's the down button.
And just when you hit it, wait a second, because it's really slow.
We've been pushing down and it's gone back to you.
You're there.
You're there.
All righty. So we are very fortunate here in Lake Forest Park to have our own municipal court, and I'm very pleased to preside as the judge. Our mission is dedicated to the fair and impartial administration of justice and equal access for all individuals. We are committed to serving everyone with respect, competence, and efficiency. We are a very lean court. We have 4.3 FTEs that are budgeted in this budget that we are looking at today. We are very fortunate to have a 0.3 FTE probation officer who is very experienced and been with us for an incredibly long time. We are a relatively new court with our court administrator being in the job for the last couple of years. I'm very happy to have Pamela McConville with me tonight. She will be available to answer any questions you might have. And we have 2 full-time clerks and a half-time cashier. We did ask for additional funding for court staff for the court, and I will get to that. But what I think you see from the police chief's budget, talking about the photo enforcement, they begin that process and then it all funnels through to my court and my staff that work so incredibly hard. I cannot be more proud of my team for the amount of work that they labor under processing those citations. This past 21-22, that we've had some highlights. We've had many challenges, but we've had some great things that have occurred really in response to the COVID-19 situation. As you know, it's been unprecedented with the court shutting down, schools being out of session, and having to go remote. Everyone has had to make great adjustments. I think what people found is that it works for a lot of people. Access to justice is extended for those that can't always take a full day off of work to come to court. They can Zoom in and it's more accessible to them, and it does save money in many ways. But responding to the challenges of going online, keeping courtrooms open by streaming on YouTube, so we still have it open to the public, has been very important. Changing all of our procedures for jury trials. We didn't have a trial that actually went, but we needed to make the public feel safe and secure should they be called in to serve as jurors. And every month we do send out summons for jurors to come in, and we answer their questions, and we let them know that we are taking every measure possible to keep them safe and that we're looking out for their interests. Since we have found that the remote court has worked so well, and we are maintaining that going forward for our infractions in the afternoons, they will remain on Zoom, but we have in-person criminal court, which is hybrid because some people do still Zoom in for those hearings. If it's a lesser offense, they can come in for those quick hearings and it's available to them. We do ask that they appear for arraignments and domestic violence and DUI charges so that they can be arraigned and the proper paperwork can be processed. I'll talk a little bit more about that paperwork and the flow of paperwork in a moment. Other highlights included, as you approved, our ability to engage with AOC on the interpreter reimbursement program. That has been in place. Ms. McConville has done great things getting that paperwork processed, and we have received funds back already. So I count that as a huge win. Other highlights, which also can be seen as challenges, is court security. So we are in person. We've opened our doors for the morning criminal calendars. And I think it's really important that we have an open court. There are other jurisdictions that have remained remote. The doors are closed. And I think in some ways they like that. It can be easier in some respects, but I think that to be responsive to our community, we need to have the doors open. People need to come in. And because we are a lean court, we have one public defender. He needs to meet with everyone. It's much easier for him to have those quick conferences with someone. If we have an interpreter, that they have that interpreter next to them. To really have that face-to-face has been really helpful. And since we opened to the hybrid court system in July, we have seen more and more people coming to court. So the numbers are increasing. I think that the police have been very busy. We're seeing increased filings. So we're one big family. And so when they get busy, we are getting busy as well. So the numbers are going up. To accommodate opening those doors, we need to, again, be mindful of everyone's safety, and we are required to have security, courtroom security. Previously, going back, we used a company called Allied, and they were unable to work with us going forward when we opened our doors. So we had to get creative on hiring elsewhere. Again, the cost of doing that has been immense. It is very hard to get people to come in and do security work at the cost. It used to be in the $20 range, and now we're paying $79 an hour for PSCS to come in and do our court security. They're a backup. We have been so blessed to have our own police department here in the building and helping us. And I see the benefit of it, that we are here, we're building relationships. I think the public coming in and our defendants coming in, they are putting a face with those officers in a different context. And I think it is beneficial to them. One of the huge pluses of having our PD present and this new contract with PSCS is that it's armed security. Previously, Allied was unarmed. And I've heard it said that if you don't have armed security, you don't have security. So it is very important that we have that extra level. And we have been really, I think it's worked out very well having our police department here. Unfortunately, our Officer Hansen has had some medical issues. And so to accommodate, because they are so lean in the police department, we have had to do backup because we need them to be able to do transport for us, and just something had to give. And I think that it's really been us working together as a team to make it work. And that's how we handle the calendars each morning, is who we get in, our private counsel or in custodies, and everyone else. Just because they have the public defender doesn't mean they're any less valuable and their time is any less valuable. So trying to be mindful of those things. So I count those as highlights. And there were a few requests that we made. And I would say, looking at this, we asked for increased staffing. It was a big ask, and I understand, being mindful of our finances, that was not funded. But I do see that the request for the finance department to get a 0.4 FTE to assist us is a win for the court. If we get that assistance, it will benefit my staff to have some of the burden of the end of month reporting and all the auditing that we do internally. Having that position funded with finance, it will benefit us. It will allow my staff to work on other projects. It takes nearly a week's worth of time to do the end of month. The money is very important that it be done properly. So I'm very appreciative to the mayor's proposed budget that it does accommodate us, even though he can't fund that position, to give us some assistance through the finance department. And we've had to lean on them, and they've been wonderful, even though they are very lean and their time is very limited. The increased pay for pro tems. If I'm unavailable to sit on the bench, I need to have someone back me up. There are other times people file disqualification affidavits of prejudice, which they want another judge to hear their case. And so we need to bring in backup to handle that work. Currently, for I think about the last 10 years, the rate has been $55 an hour. Other courts in our jurisdiction are paying up to $89 an hour. Many offer 3-hour minimums. So you bring someone in, they're guaranteed a certain amount of pay. We are unable to, the mayor is unable to fund my request to go up to 70, but he has included in his budget increasing the rate to $65. And I'm very appreciative and believe that will make a significant difference in us being competitive and being able to bring in replacements that are qualified, and that they will want to come to our court. Besides being a lovely jurisdiction, it's, I want them to come out here and feel comfortable and feel that they're being adequately compensated. The third request that we made was for Laserfiche, and that was included in the mayor's proposed budget. That is a software program that will allow us to move into being a paperless court. So it will save us time and money by the resources of our court staff in not having to pull files for every single hearing. And for the actual paper and the different products that we are purchasing now. So if we can transition to managing our files in an electronic format. Ultimately, the state will be going to a new system called Odyssey. We will not be migrated to that system for a number of years, but I believe it's time that we adopt this software and that we move into transitioning our historic files and our new files that are ongoing. Starting now, it's going to take some time. We're going to begin scanning in everything and getting organized. There is, I believe it's been mentioned previously, but there is a great program called O-Court that is being used by many jurisdictions, and it's a document management system. It would work with the Laserfiche and allow us to share those files and paperwork quickly and easily. All the courts that have it are just thrilled that they are able to have that flow of paper and signatures and communication right in front of them without someone having to run out and pull files. And when we're operating remotely, it's incredibly important that we have things electronically. We're moving into a future that necessarily will entail remote courts. So transitioning now and getting our files ready for the statewide migration that will happen eventually in a number of years is important. And I think it's a very appropriate expenditure now. And I was very pleased that the mayor included that in his budget. It's a one-time outlay of funds and then maintenance costs. One of the beauties about this is that we can share this software with other departments in the city. So I think it would benefit different departments because it is separate and secure. And so this outlay, although it's being included in the court's budget, will help the other departments. I think that we should look at that as a great opportunity for the city to benefit in more ways. The budget as laid out on page 67, obviously the things that we cannot really change are the static costs with benefits and salaries. I mean, that's huge and we can't work around that. The big line items that I'm sure you may have questions about are the expenditure for the Laserfiche. Also, what we didn't have previously was the huge expenditure for security. I don't really believe there's a way around that. Having the court operating in person just in the mornings on Mondays and Wednesdays actually saves costs because we don't have to bring in security for the afternoon calendars that we are holding. So remaining remote for the infractions actually helps us save resources. And that concludes my presentation, but I'm here to answer any questions if you have on the line items or what I've presented on.
Thank you very much, Judge Grant. We sure appreciate your time. Colleagues, questions for Judge Grant or staff? Councilmember Bodie.
Yes, thank you very much, Judge. I appreciate the presentation, and I just want to let you know I'm definitely supportive of moving to Laserfiche and more electronic filings and record keeping, because I do think that that's essential to move our court forward. So thank you for that initiative. And Obviously, security is a high priority as well. So I just want to speak positively about those two elements of your proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bodie. Colleagues, other questions? Mr. Lebo.
Thank you, Judge Grant, for the presentation. A couple things. Is there, and maybe it's somewhere else and I didn't see it, is there a report that shows the level of service that's, for example, been offered over the last 4 or 5 years in terms of court hearings and so, just as a way to judge, pardon the pun, the level of service that we provide over the last few years and what the trends are?
Are you talking about like how many cases we hear, like how many myths and contested? Yes, we do get reports on that. 2019 was really the last year that we can do a full year on. After that, we went into COVID, and then of course we had the lights come on, and we had 3 months where we took in 2 years of work in 3 months. So you can't really go judge up that. Right now, we appear to be on track with 2019 on requests for myths and contested. It's about 200 myth contested, what we call a good cause. Our judge offers if a case has gone into collections and maybe somebody didn't even know they had the ticket, or maybe they're in a better place that they could pay it now, that they can contact the court, and the court has measures that we can set that to go before the judge to be heard, to pull from collection, potentially lower the case so that the person can afford to pay it. So yes, I could get you numbers. It'd be really rough numbers for the last few years just because of everything that's happened.
I am curious, so that would be fine to see what kind of sort of service that's been provided and how that relates.
I just have a suggestion. I think we could also get Councilmember Lebo maybe a copy of past annual reports that have been done. That might shed some light on some of the questions he's asking.
The other is, could you talk a little more about, for a period of time, we did go all remote, if I understand correctly, but we are going into sort of a hybrid period. Is that, and what do you see as going forward in terms of in-person versus remote?
Well, I'd like to continue to offer the hybrid model for the criminal cases. That would be our morning calendars on Mondays and Wednesdays. Those cases that are going to just be pre-trials that are quick and easy hearings, maybe they're just continuances, people can zoom in and get that done. Again, having people come in person, I think is very valuable, especially when they're facing more serious charges, such as domestic violence charges or DUI. I would want them to be in person. I don't think we want to go back to a fully remote court. I have our in custody defendants. They are transported in. They're here in the courtroom. While we were completely remote, they were off site and they were on a tablet zooming into the court. I don't think that's adequate. I think it's much better to have them face to face. I think they come into our lovely courtroom and they understand that the situation is serious and it sinks in. I think that's important. So I would imagine that we will go forward on a hybrid basis indefinitely. I don't see going in person for the afternoon infraction calendars because we would not want to incur the expense of providing security. I think it's untenable at this point with the cost.
And that would be for the infractions.
The afternoon infractions. So we have, so to get an idea of what it entails, if we want to talk about just the traffic cameras, the tickets, the way that they are processed, they get mailed out to them and they have many different options on how they can respond. You know, they can pay the $136 and be done with it. Even if they pay it, that's still a great deal of work for staff to process and reconcile. They might want to go online and do a tech hearing, and then that will come into my email box, and I can process those tickets by going in if they're contesting or mitigating. They might do it by mail, so I'm getting something in writing. Again, there's in camera, off the record, processing at least 200 or so cases per month, just on some of these infraction hearings or camera tickets. And each time those are processed through, we are touching. My staff is having to pull those and look at them. And if I'm looking online, I have to pull up the video. I have to look at their driving record. They are time intensive, even though it seems like it would be a very simple matter to address those cases. If they go to collection and then they ask to have a good cause hearing, it comes back. They have to make adjustments. They have to go in and correct the system. And you can talk about how many touches it takes to reconcile.
Yeah. So basically, besides, taking away even a phone call, somebody calling and asking how to do all this. If we get it in the mail, generally in the mail or email, we have to go in, we have to make an entry that we've received it. We have to verify their address. We have to make an entry, we verify their address and or update their address. We have to set the case. We have to get the paperwork ready. We have to set up a hearing, put the paperwork together, give it to the judge, wait for the judge, get it back from the judge, update everything the judge said, and then either mail it or email it back to the person. And then we wait for them to pay it, where we open the case back in and take in the money and then close it. So there's, I mean, every
and then reconciling the money as well
is, yeah, 3 to 5 touches easily without a phone call. And generally there's always a phone call.
And having the part-time cashier, I think that we could use more a full-time position to be answering the phone calls and going to the window. We are very busy. We get a lot of traffic at our window and we provide amazing customer service. Ms. Hayes is our cashier, and she's amazing. And she also works down in passports. And I don't think anyone could do a better job of addressing these cases. And people aren't always happy to get these tickets, but she will walk them through it and they usually leave with a smile. So I think that is says a lot about Ms. Hayes.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, colleagues, other questions? We're gonna have to keep moving on here. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, if you want the amount of criminal filings, infractions, parkings, I could walk to my desk and hand you that report from 2015 to almost present right now.
It doesn't have to be right now. I'm
Okay.
just trying to understand what the workload is and how it's changed over time. And then if you'll indulge me for one more.
Let me just check and see if there's anyone else. Councilmember Goldman or Councilmember Bodie, Mr. Fotani, anyone additional questions right now? Please, you have the floor.
I totally understand going to digital records, and you talked about the Laserfish process of now making it digital, but you also talked about the state wanting to go to a system called Odyssey sometime in the future. And is there a compatibility, or do we need to change what we're doing? And then,
Well, we need the Laserfish to go into the statewide system.
Okay.
That is going to be mandated.
okay,
That's still many years away. When
Okay.
I mentioned Oak Court, that would be a document system that we could start implementing. And there has been some pushback previously, but now the state is going to be working with the courts that have Oak Court to migrate that into the Odyssey system. So some courts are paperless now, and they use this wonderful system called Oak Court. Eventually, we will have a statewide system that they've been working on, that they were going to start rollout, but there were issues. So the state has now delayed it. So we will eventually, when it's our turn, which could be 3 or 4 years down the line, we will be migrated into that system. I think we should take steps sooner than that and implement Oak Court. But in any event, we need to prepare for that move to be paperless, which will include Laserfish to organize and start scanning our files in. And we only have so much room in our vault to maintain these files.
so that's part of my confusion. So this budget would include the Laserfish component, but the Oak Court is not in this budget, or is that part of
It is not in this.
Future request.
It'd be going forward.
And what would that cost?
48,000 for that is the case management system. It's a new jury system. It's taking the money that is paid to the collection agency and court, which is our third-party company, and it will download it straight into the GIS, the state system, so we don't have to take in every single payment. What else? It sets hearings. It has all the judges' orders would be online. All the minutes attested to would be forms. So you'd basically be doing a click or a drop down and putting in the amount, and then it's just emailed. There's no printing.
So I understand. So the Laserfish is about 40 or 50,000.
34.
34. And then the Oak Court would be another 48.
Should be 48. And to be honest, I would have asked for it, but the state system, there was no integration, and it was really hard for me to ask the city for another $50,000 when I didn't know if it was going to work with the new system. Had I known, which we're just finding out now that they are going to integrate it, but like I said, I would have had it in here in a heartbeat, but I couldn't ask for something I didn't know if it was going to work. But
it does work.
They are saying now in the last couple of weeks that they are going to find a way. It's still not 100%, but they're going to try to find a way to integrate it.
It's frustrating, and believe me, the courts that have paid the money and are utilizing Oak Court are very frustrated that there had been pushback. It appears that they now have delayed start for Odyssey, and they are going to work to integrate Oak Court into that system. So there has been a big shift on that. But again, I'm very, very appreciative that we have the Laserfish included in the budget, and I believe it will benefit other departments as well. And I think we can explore that and utilize the benefit of that software.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we're gonna have this. We could definitely go deeper into the technology side of it. And nobody would love to do that more than me as a technical person, a geek, and particularly when it comes to document management. I think just the chair's privilege is making a quick comment. I think your approach, maybe seeing how the dust settles out in terms of what the state does. Early adoption is not necessarily your friend when it comes to these kinds of things, especially when we have a lot of migration to do. And so I think that the approach sounds like a sound one, and look forward to additional conversations about technology in the future. And I, for one, just wanted to say thank you both for what you do for the community and the fact that you've highlighted the importance of having a local court here, about the human elements and doing it in person. I think that my experience, and I know my colleagues would share my sentiments, that the court staff, as well as security, everyone has been immensely considerate and professional whenever court's in session, and when I've had to pass through security when they didn't know who I was. That was a little interesting one time. But we really do thank you for doing this in person. And I know it's a real challenge. I just did jury duty. Fortunately, didn't for King County Superior Court. Fortunately, they excused me after voir dire, but I would have been happy to serve. And I know that there are many other members of the community that really deeply value the in-person experience.
Thank you. And you're all welcome to come visit anytime.
Thank you very much, both of you. Okay. I want to be sensitive to our colleagues' time out here. We're moving on to municipal services, if I'm not incorrect. Yes, municipal services. Oh.
Why do we need it?
Hi, Matt.
Who's running the show while you're out here?
Nobody. He just wants to play with the podium.
Well, let's see how high it goes.
So, folks, this is what happens when we pull back the curtain and you get to see the wizard behind.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to be pretty brief tonight. Just briefly, since the judge mentioned it, the other departments that will benefit from Laserfish will be mostly my department. Since we have a whole bunch of records that aren't digitized at all. And basically, we're a pretty small department. Basically, we operate off of 4 people here on almost a daily basis. Caroline only works Tuesdays, through Fridays. Jessica and I are mostly here every Monday through Friday, every day. And then our passport agents, Shannon works Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And then Cassandra from Public Works works Mondays and some Saturdays. Lori fills in when I need her in case Lillian and Teresa, who are completely outside our departments, outside the city, can't make it. And really nothing, not really asking for anything. Our budget is pretty small overall compared to everybody else, especially to PD. And really our budget is just higher because we were trying to get it back from post-COVID to where we were before, and also including, trying to include for inflation. So really, I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Anyone have questions? Out into the Mr. Lebo?
Yes.
You've been so quiet tonight. Please continue.
Thank you, Matt. Well, looking at the line items, there are significant increases in the newsletter, communications, and advertising. Could you talk a little about the need for those?
All those are relative to the inflation costs. So everything to do with inflation have skyrocketed. If you haven't noticed, everywhere, all the costs for that have skyrocketed. The advertising cost is going up because we are publishing more and more ordinances, and the more ordinances we do, those costs are going to go up.
So it's not, for example, putting out additional newsletters, it's about reflecting of
it's the same amount of newsletter, it's just the printing costs have gone up.
Okay, thank you.
Colleagues, any questions? Wow, thank you very much. We sure appreciate it.
The question amounts are related to how long you talk.
Oh, so at this point, I think Phil was going to give an update on the football game, Mayor.
No.
I do know the score.
I don't want to know.
My brother's watching it and texting me, so ask the mayor if he wants to know. He didn't.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
For mine. Okay. As Matt said, this will be short and sweet. So we'll get started. So this will include the executive budget, the council budget, and then the community partners. So we'll start with the executive branch. Well, the executive department consists of the mayor, myself, and our new HR director, Shannon Moore. Shannon started today. I was happy that she showed up. Honestly, we've been without an HR director basically since June. We've had Lee on retainer if we had questions, needed help, but she's now in Tucson, and we're happy to see Shannon walk through the door this morning. I had talked to her today about coming in maybe the first meeting in October when all the council members are back to get an introduction. So she'll be great for you. Wait for the pause. So there's just a couple items of note in the executive budget that I wanted to bring to your attention. As you look, there's decreases just about everywhere. One that I wanted to bring to your attention was professional services. If you remember when we started this budget process, I put out a request that all the departments basically look at outside of salaries and benefits, kind of a zero-based budget. Let's step back, coming out of the pandemic, take a look at our budgets and make sure that we're not just budgeting because that's how we always budgeted. And if you point to the professional services line item in the executive department, that's exactly what was happening. As Lee and I went back through and looked at this, we're never spending the dollars that we were putting in there. We have a good idea of what's in there. We have Summit Law Group. We have, the entities that help us do our advertising. you know, with Civic Plus and NeoGov, LinkedIn, a lot of it has to do with HR. And so we know our costs year to year. We can pretty much anticipate those, put in a small factor for inflation, but there was no need for these $125,000 budget numbers. So we pared that back down to the 75,000 that you see there. You know, you do see a huge jump in travel expenses percent wise, but when you look at the dollars, we're just moving back from, you know, budgeting through a pandemic, you know, hoping that maybe there'd be some training that we'd be sending people to, which did not happen. And then also looking at the future of having the ability to do some of these conferences and some of these trainings just remotely. And so there's a little bit of savings there. Same thing with training. We just looked at the dollar amounts that were being spent there and pared that back. Volunteer and staff recognition, we're bringing this back up to where it was pre-pandemic. We did a lot of things with the staff, a lot of recognition, longevity, things like that. We tried to have some things throughout the summer months of, you know, some little barbecues and things. So bringing those back. So that's, I think, pretty much out of that line budget. Council budget, just want to draw your attention. Salaries, we put some additional dollars in there, just not knowing exactly how the salary commission will come out. And so we put an increase in there. It was, I guess, at this point, so that we aren't starting from zero. We didn't want to put in the same amount that we've done in last year. So council currently gets about $600 a month. Lindsay put in close to $800 a month, and we'll see where that falls out. The one thing that we also wanted to make sure that we did here is we have 3 brand new council members. We have a council member in Councilmember Bodie who got to come into the council, and then we went into a pandemic. And so I think there's some training opportunities or some conferences that the council may want to go to. And so we increase those numbers slightly above pre-pandemic level numbers. So that's, I think, all I can say about that budget. And then lastly, our community partner funding. The majority of them are funded in the mayor's proposed budget at the same numbers they were during the last biennium, with 2 exceptions. Hang time being one. We had budgeted this at the numbers we're seeing them actually request reimbursement for us, reimbursement costs, and they were never getting to the 25,000+ that we were putting in the budget. So we pared that back. On top of that, we were informed just a few weeks ago that YMCA has stepped away from hang time, is no longer a partner in that. But the city of Shoreline is picking that up, and we'll still run that through the middle school. Lindsay's already spoken to them on you spoke to them on the dollar amount. Maybe it was Corey. I'm sorry, I'm getting people mixed up. Spoke to them on the dollar amount, the 20,000, and why we based it off that, and Shoreline was comfortable with that. So they will run that program going forward. It's unfortunate YMCA has been stepping away from a lot of these community programs over the past several years. This is just one further step away. And then the increase in the senior center. So we added $5,000 a year in that. Last year we gave them 20 a year. Bumped that to 25. That was a request they made. And looking at the good work that they did through the pandemic, the good work they're doing today, we felt that was an appropriate request. And we have some cost savings from hang time over the last 2 years. That program did not run. So the full amount that we budgeted in this biennium comes back to the city and ending fund balance. We thought, what's a good way to spend that other than to put 10,000 of that money coming back into a community partner that's been serving the community so well. So I stand for questions. That's the end of my presentation.
Council members, questions for Mr. Hill? Councilmember Bodie.
Excuse me. Yes, I have one question. On the City Council Department budget summary, there are employee benefits noted. And what are those employee benefits? I guess I was unaware of extra benefits charge. So am I, what falls into that category that I'm missing?
Oh, payroll taxes is what the finance director is saying behind me.
Oh, absolutely.
I was at a loss too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I get it now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Anyone else? Questions for Mr. Hill? I'm sorry, Mr. Goldman, I didn't see you up there, please.
Yes, thanks. I have a question about hang time. Since the previous biennium was partially in a pandemic, do you foresee that maybe the number of children that are utilizing it, that maybe the previous biennium might not be the best baseline to estimate the next biennium?
So Councilmember Goldman, we didn't just use the previous biennium. We looked back a number of years and see that this was consistent. They haven't been spending that dollar amount. So in this last biennium, they spent zero. So we looked to the previous biennium, which was outside the pandemic, to see what they were spending.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Thank you, Councilmember. Pardon me, losing my voice. Thoughts, questions from Mr. Hill?
Thank you. This is a really general question. I've noticed in looking through the various departmental budgets that there's quite a range in the increase for employee benefits. And I was just curious why some it's actually 7%, others it's like 35%.
We'll let the finance director cover the details of that.
I'm going to go ahead and keep that pretty broad.
Okay.
We have a salary and benefits spreadsheet, and we have had so many changes in personnel. You'll see some departments will shift up, others will go down on costs. And so there is just a flow, but what we do is we just have to do a stamp at a point in time. And so for some departments, it's going to go increase, others it will decrease. But as far as the staffing, the levels, and the benefits, we just do it from a point in time.
That would be
meaning
what they're drawing, right? Single versus
yes,
married with children.
Meaning what their coverage is for health benefits, whether they're single, married, married with a child, and that is the range. And plus we also have a range of selection of what type of benefits you can choose from here at the city. And so it's based on that.
So if you put them together in aggregate, are there significant changes? Because in aggregate, it's quite an increase.
Because the costs are going up. It's not just that there's changes. The cost of health insurance is going up. The cost of the retirement for the LEF and the PERS continues to, I shouldn't say LEF. I should say just PERS, continues to go up. Sorry. Just PERS continues to go up. There's more in that benefits than just healthcare, but there are some significant increases that are being budgeted within that too.
Yeah, I would be interested in a little more detail because in aggregate, it is a significant increase and just as a level of understanding. But what you said makes sense.
As a whole, the city, and we really trued that up in our last biennium, I will say. So if you went back and looked at the previous budget, some of it really significantly changed, but we have really brought it down to being very specific on how we do that evaluation of the budget, and then put it in with escalators for cost increases for health, vision, and the entire package that the city ends up paying for.
Just to one point, I mean, in past budgets, the way that it was put together is it was the most expensive plan for everybody. That's how you budget. So you didn't see a lot of fluctuation. We dialed more into what are we actually buying today. So if you have an employee who's single and leaves and your replacement is somebody who's married and has 3 kids, you will see a huge swing in what they're taking. And so the cost can change significantly because we budget it so tight, but we want to keep it tight. So we're budgeting to true costs. And that's kind of what exercise we've gone through.
And just on point, thank you all. Just one moment, Mr. Furtani. Thematically, and we haven't really talked about this, not only the cost of doing the good work that you all do has gotten more expensive because of inflationary pressures, but because of the nature of the economy in general, costs for insurance, whether it's liability insurance, health insurance, whatever else, those costs, I think, largely were kind of bumping along for a period of time. And this city has done a very good job in the past of being very economical and finding better solutions for and a different range of options for employees. And what I have seen and what I've heard out there in the world right now is that from the standpoint of health insurance and liability insurance, people are seeing incredible increases. Liability particularly, we've talked a little bit about our insurance pool that we participate in, and those costs have gone up 36%, I think, in one
43.
case. And yeah, it's just
43.
43. And it is, unfortunately, we're kind of getting a bit of a bow wave here on some of these things. So thank you for your patience, Mr. Frotani.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So thank you, City Administrator and Finance Director, for those wonderful explanations. And to the point that the City Administrator was making about the budgeting for both the worst case scenario where the benefits are maxed out with the Cadillac plans or whatever you want to call them. Isn't that a safer strategy? Because I'm thinking of the big demographic shift we've had in all the department heads and in a lot of the staffs where a lot of people have retired and we've replaced them with people who are significantly younger. And if we do this real situation budgeting, it means that our benefits costs will start to increase, not pacing inflation, but outstripping inflation as, of course, people get married, get families, et cetera, and things like that. So do you have a comment about that? Are we taking that into account that these changes may happen, not in the next biennium, of course, but certainly over the next decade or so?
Yeah, we kind of know where it's hard to tell when somebody's just going to quit, but we know where the city's demographic is going. We know who's, getting closer to retirement. You can start anticipating some of those things. I guess it's a matter, if you only have one or two here or there, I mean, we don't have huge turnover. I don't like to budget, so high on everything that it's telling a false story about where we really need to be with our revenues. And if we don't need all these revenues over here, can we spend them somewhere else and take these one-offs as people retire or decide to take another line of work? So it's a philosophy, maybe it's a discussion worth having, but it's philosophically, you kind of want to be, where's that fine point?
That's fair.
Thank you. Colleagues, other questions for Minister Hill? Okay. I think we are at, so we've done community partner funding.
I am the end.
What's that?
I was the last one.
You are the last one. I was just making sure I didn't miss anybody. I would be remiss if I didn't give our illustrious mayor opportunity to weigh in before we go to citizen comments. Mr. Mayor, do you have any thoughts?
Just like I keep saying, thank you to all the heads of the department and the staff, because I know this was a lot of work. And I will apologize to, I couldn't give you everything, but I'm kind of getting used to that over these years. So, but I think we did good, and hopefully it works with the council. And as you know, on the community partners, I raise that pretty much every year. We didn't really go up a lot this year, but the senior citizens saying, we spend $1 billion on kids in school, but we don't spend any money on the people that serve this country and the older people. And so I have no problem giving the seniors center more money. And that gal, I think she's a rock star. She sat there out in the weather the whole day at the picnic in the park, and she sat there and was tooting the horn of the senior center. And she impresses me. She does a good job. So anything we do to help them, it's a great thing.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, Matt, do we have anybody? I'd like to open up citizen comments is our practice here in budget and finance meetings. Matt, do you have anyone in the wings that would like to make public comment?
Yep, it looks like Jillian Anderson wants to talk.
Hi, Julian, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I fear that I'm the only one, and that's not good news. But anyway, I really am an amateur every time I try to engage with the city budget. There's great complexity. and many threads that run in many directions. So my comment is just 3 questions. I notice with pleasure that the allocation to the arborist position has gone from a 60% position to an 80% position. This is good news. And the mayor's message said that that would be funded from the tree fund. So I searched in vain to find the report about the tree fund. It's not in the budget. So I would like to know what is the current balance of the tree fund? That's a question. Also, I looked for the chaplain's salary because the gentleman who's been selected looks like he'll be a fine person for that sort of work. But I didn't find chaplain listed in the police department roster or in the, in their salary grid. So I don't know which one of those is the chaplain's salary. And related to the chaplain, I'm sure that there's plenty of need for the counseling services that will be provided in the police department. But I think there's maybe need throughout City Hall, meaning no insult. But I've learned recently that it may be that arborists leave in part because they feel stress in their interactions with the public. This is a place for a chaplain or a counselor to have a good effect. So I would have expected a chaplain or counselor to be in the HR department, not in the police department. So that's a question too. Thank you very much for all your attention to all these details.
Thank you very much, Julian. Let's see, do we have anyone else, Matt?
No.
I think that's it. Well, colleagues, I just wanted to sum up. This is really the fun part where we get to listen to the departments and better understand the workings, or in a very small way, the workings of what the various departments do. Thank you all for your very thoughtful questions. We have a second round of presentations coming up here on Thursday, and I know we'll have lots of questions at that time as well. And if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I think we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Goodbye, everyone. See you in a couple of weeks.
Bye, Lori. Bye. Bye, guys. Have a safe trip, Lori.
Safe trip, yeah.
Thank
Take
you.
care. And you as well, Lori. Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be hanging out with the funeral services and viewing